So welcome to this episode in the podcast series about wisdom, brought to you by Stuart Neville from Mindful Developments and Adam Wells from adamwells.com. We've done a series of conversations about wisdom and really just kind of approaching the subject of wisdom and how we develop it and some of the themes surrounding the ideas. So just to kind of wrap up a little bit what we've been talking about, here's the next question. How do you think about the journey of personal development? What are your ideas, your system of thought? Do you draw on a traditional framework, psychoanalytic psychotherapy or Buddhism or something else? Is it important to have a system or a framework or a set of ideas? And if so, how do we go about developing that so that the journey and the process we're talking about, we've got kind of framework to make sense of what it feels like to be on this journey?
My own experience is I did the journey first and then discovered the framework second. So I really see now that the framework is an archetypal framework, that archetypal hero's journey to instill maturity into the individual, which is the rites of passage. The first stage of leaving that known world and accepting the loss that you've left this known world that you've known so well, going through this middle stage of transformation. It's transforming psychologically the way you think. I'm no longer the adolescent child. I'm now a mature adult. And then coming back and embedding yourself back into society in the third stage as the adult and being able to accept your new responsibilities as an adult. That's fundamentally the framework. But it all happens in a container. What I think we find so challenging now is to do these changes is that we don't step away from our known world. The magic happens by having to go into this unknown space, this liminal space of uncertainty. You're in the middle and it's a mess and you're having to unravel the mess. That's the process. I was in the middle of that mess for a long time and I've learned through my own experience. Only we can do the journey. Only we can do the work. Plenty of people that can help us and guide us, but we have to embrace the ups and downs of the path. What's your take on that, Stuart?
Well, I think it can be really hard and confusing and scary, and it's dangerous. You know, it can be anxiety producing, and some people there can be a mental health challenge or what have you. It's hard anyway, sometimes. I think it's harder when you're alone and it's confusing. And if you're like, for you, for example, you said, you've kind of found the hero's journey and relates back to the Joseph Campbell and lots of other people that have written about the hero's journey, and it's a framework and it kind of helps because it gives you a kind of reference point. And if it's an idea that really relates to the actual experiences of your life, then it's meaningful, and the ideas are meaningful because you've earned that meaningfulness by living out the experience the ideas relate to. That's for the benefit of hindsight. So if you're not necessarily at that stage of any particular process of change, then if your society doesn't give you a system or a structure within which to go through the experience, it can be difficult. Traditionally, society would have given us these opportunities, and they still do to a certain extent. You know, go to university, suddenly there's a change, or your particular job, or something happens to you not by your will. That might just carry you along. But traditionally, if you grow up in a Buddhist society or Buddhist culture, the whole Buddhist religion would have given you a framework within which to think about and understand and conceptualize and go through a process of change. But for us nowadays, for most people, they wouldn't just think, identify as a wholeheartedly, if you're not raised in that culture with such a system like Zen Buddhism, for example. So I think the challenge for us nowadays is to find the kind of way of thinking and understanding this process of development in a way that feels meaningful to us. And I think that's a different kind of challenge, because it's about finding the ideas that are really meaningful, that actually describe our actual experience, as opposed to they're just kind of in our heads in an abstract way,
and actually relate to us as well. Think about, there's so much noise, and recognizing actually this relates to me, I feel this.
So I think it's what's our philosophy, or what's our framework of ideas, or how do we understand this, and to educate ourselves and to read and talk and listen to other people and find because it's there, it's in our culture, it's there in, whether it's from the language of psychotherapy or Buddhism or Joseph Campbell or what have you. People have been thinking and talking and writing about this kind of experience for millennia. I think there is something to be said for just like letting life pull you along and see what happens, for sure. But there's also a huge benefit in making an effort to find a way that you can understand this process. And even if that changes over time, it's fine. But it's finding a personal philosophy or those ideas, those symbols.
Is this like when we get to that stage, I'm wanting the answers to the bigger existential questions of life? Maybe there's that point within ourselves on our journey when I need to know more. I need to understand what's happening. I don't get this. Maybe life's completely fallen apart and it's like I'm looking for a higher answer here. And that is the catalyst of becoming the seeker or the searcher. There's something that flicks the switch in us that makes us become very inquisitory to finding out, okay, what is it? Is it Buddhism? Is it Joseph Campbell? What is going on here? How have others dealt with this?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think there are certain ideas you can almost engage with for much of your life. And at a certain time in your life, a certain idea means something to us. And then we have more experience. And then we understand that idea in a much deeper, more nuanced or deeply felt kind of way with more experience. And actually it's a gift really to have that idea as a challenge, as a support, as something that we can understand more or make meaningful in our own life. So like the ideas at the heart of the Buddhist philosophy are not just ideas to be kind of understood intellectually and then that's the end of it. They're ideas that can point us towards a contemplation of our experience, inquiry and investigation and a realization at deeper levels. And not just Buddhism, but there's ideas contained within symbols or within stories. Some ideas challenge you as well. I guess where my thinking's at is that there's a benefit in finding out what's meaningful to you individually or for each of us. And if we find that, then it really feels like we've found something important, so like a treasure or something that's very valuable to us, that we really see some beauty and power and significance in, wherever it's come from, whether it's come from psychotherapy or Buddhism or Joseph Campbell, what have you. There's a huge value in that, more so than just an off-the-shelf system that you just wholeheartedly take on face value and believe as a dogmatic kind of way. To find it for yourself, I think, is a really important part of the process as well.
I agree totally. You're taking control of your life. You're not outsourcing your life to your mobile phone or to Google by looking for all the answers. You're actually questioning, challenging, living with full awareness and enabling you to be authentic. I am in control of my life. I am walking my world, my path, my own way. You're walking on fresh snow. You're not following anybody else's footsteps.
I think that, discovering what feels meaningful in my own way, from my own experience. It's so interesting because as you were talking there, I was kind of expecting you initially to say something like, not to rely on traditions, like a traditional religious answer that gives you all the answers packaged in a particular form. That's what I expected you might say. And when you didn't, you said, look, I won't just rely on what Google tells me or whatever's trending on my YouTube feed or whatever, and how that has almost become the new source of ideas for us rather than a traditional, say, religious or philosophical thing. It's what's trending on Instagram or Facebook. That's the new source of information.
The new religion.
It made me smile that whether it's from a tradition or whether it's from the social media trending thing, whatever, they're both equally potentially dangerous if you don't take that idea and really make it meaningful for yourself in a new, fresh way. And I love that metaphor of taking inspiration from somebody who's gone before you that's offering something, but picking it up and making it your own because it's the idea is meaningful for you and it relates to your own experience.
Times change. The idea could be 50 years old, adopt it for the modern times. You can do that. So it's not just to copy it.
So it's got to be
copy it
alive.
literally. It's to adapt.
Yeah.
It's got to be alive for the current moment.
And then it feels a beautiful and invaluable thing. But it's still an idea. It's an idea or a system or a philosophy or whatever that points to something experiential, but it's still an idea. And I think we probably do need some form of idea or framework or system of ideas, what have you, to make meaning out of the subjective experience of being alive and going through this process of change. Although the ideas aren't the be all and end all, because what they're actually helping you understand is the experience itself, which is much more immediate than just the idea of it. Yeah, I like that. I'm glad you've discovered that kind of hero's journey. I think lots of people find that really meaningful.
It revealed itself to me, and I know it's an archetype, the individual hero's journey, but I think that you can roll this up to make collective hero's journey for society, as well as changing oneself. It's also the hero's journey of changing society for the better. COVID-19, the world is on a hero's journey. How do we change the world for the better? You can roll it up. It's not just about the individual. The hero's journey is about coming back with your gift to serve society for the benefit of the whole. If we all did that, we roll it all up, then we've got a better world in that sense. So maybe it's an archetypal natural intelligence that if we all adopted it, automatically we would have a growing world in the fullest sense of the word.
I suppose that's where there can be value in culture, because culture can carry forward some of these ideas. I watched Reese's film, The Rise of Skywalker, the latest 2019, whatever, 2020 release, latest movie in the Star Wars series. And basically the kind of crux of the story, the kind of main character, the young Jedi, Ren, she faces a choice. Does she let the collective kind of power of all the previous Sith Lords that she can inherit, does she identify with that and become the most powerful person in the galaxy because she's had that influence in her life? Or does she identify and prioritize the collective power of all the Jedi, her teacher and her teacher's teacher and teacher's teacher, and all going back? And they're all kind of whispering in her ear, saying, here's our legacy. And then the Sith Lord is saying, I've got the power and I will die and you'll become the new Sith Lord, but I'll be within you, just like my Sith Lord was within me. And you'll have the power to rule everything. And she has to make the choice. It's quite, in a way, quite a naive and childish metaphor, but it made me smile because I thought to myself, actually, there are so many ideas out there that people have written about and shared to help other people, and it's in our culture, and we can, if we choose, we can find a way of internalizing that. But there's also lots of other influences in society and ways that other people behave that we can internalize, and we'll, one way or the other, we'll go more towards power and control and dominance and exploitation, or we'll go more towards wisdom. But we're not starting out with a blank slate. We've got all this stuff to draw on in our culture and in our society, but it still has to come within us in a real life way.
By each individual acknowledging their wisdom, that is the power, ultimately, isn't it?
Yeah. That it's you don't have to look that far. You just have to kind of go to Netflix, whatever, and see the latest movie, and potentially it's there. The lessons are there. So yeah, we've got to just make it our own.
That's the key thing.